Hello and welcome to this video. Today I am going to talk about premenstrual dysphoric disorder, commonly known as PMDD, and what I like to call personally Hell Week. For those who might not know, maybe you're here because you have someone in your life who appears to have this disorder and told you that they have this disorder and you want to know a little bit more, which is fantastic. Thank you so much if you are that person. PMDD is the most intense form of PMS, which are premenstrual symptoms, the symptoms that you get the week before your period during your luteal phase, it's called. Luteal. It includes, but is not limited to, severe insomnia, very high levels of cortisol, which leads to very high levels of stress 24/7, which is the cause of the insomnia, heavy bloating in the whole body, especially the upper body, and it can be very painful in the breast area, although the breast pain extends to the period week as well. Mind fog, which is also linked to quite a severe inability to concentrate and focus properly, and then feeling extremely distressed, depressed, irritable, and unsafe, and kind of threatened throughout that whole period. During PMDD week, we're overall just more pessimistic than other weeks and just overall more dissatisfied with life. And you can do more research on this because that's not really what this video is about. But in a nutshell, the overall dissatisfaction and mental discomfort and pain that one feels during PMDD week is linked to serotonin. And actually, research suggests that women with PMDD may have an abnormal serotonin system. Serotonin being a neurotransmitter in the brain, which is heavily responsible for pain, sleep, and mood regulation, which I don't know if you have PMDD or not, but if you do, the moment I read that, I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. The physical and mental symptoms that a woman feels during PMDD are so severe that they often lead to suicidal ideation, which is linked to the hopelessness that this agony will be repeated every single month for decades and decades. And so one, in complete despair, comes to the conclusion that this might be the only way out. After having suffered from PMDD for years and years now, in the past year, I put my energy into experimenting different things on myself every time I had PMDD, kind of treating myself as a lab rat, if you will. It is my sincere hope with my findings to bring you a little bit of validation, understanding, comfort, and help today. Because despite how destructive this disorder is on women's lives, like many women's health issues and hormonal issues, there's not that much research yet. And so there's not that many solutions yet. As I said previously, it is heavily related to a serotonin problem. And so for now, the only solution that has proven to be truly effective in nullifying almost all the symptoms of PMDD is taking SSRIs, which refers to selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And if that's what you're doing and it works for you, I think it's amazing. I did want to try everything else first that I could do on my own before resorting to that. And I have actually finally found some little tips and tricks and information that have really helped me make PMDD manageable. And don't get me wrong, while the suffering is still atrocious, in the past couple of months, having implemented what I experimented on and learned throughout this journey. The symptoms have become manageable, and I haven't been anywhere close to feeling suicidal ideation or engage in conflict or want to self-sabotage or things like that, which if you've had PMDD for a while, you know is an amazing feat. So to introduce the different tips and tricks that I have learned and that I want to share with you today, I've prepared some analogies that are really going to help you understand the bigger picture and will help a lot once you decide to put these tips and tricks into action and when you're in the thick of it. First, we're going to see two complementary analogies who are really going to help you regain a sense of control regarding PMDD, which is crucial, as PMDD by definition and by nature makes you feel very out of control. It will also really help you regain some compassion towards yourself, which once you will have regained control and compassion almost completely, you will see the difference that it makes while you're suffering in the actual week. So the first analogy is the bucket analogy. Here we have a beautiful, gorgeous, bucket. Imagine your daily capacity for stress tolerance being this bucket, and everybody has this bucket. So ideally, someone would start the day here at 0. But the truth is, any person who has some problems in their daily lives, whether it's in their relationships at the moment, at work, at school, you rarely start at 0, unfortunately, with your health also. So let's just say these are the problems that you have these days. Then on top of that, you add the fact that a lot of people have trauma and or mental issues. Then this is where PMDD comes in. You add PMDD, which basically for some reason puts your body in fight or flight mode 24/7, which is due to the high levels of cortisol that you have during that week because of your hormones, these damn hormones. And so you are in fight or flight 24/7, but 24/7 meaning at night as well, which also causes, like I said, the insomnia. So you start your day actually here. Also, every little thing that's gonna be piled on throughout the day, you just got out of bed here. You gotta understand that. So that's crazy. And then throughout the day, God knows how much stuff gets put on during the day, whether it's on your way to work, if you take public transportation, once you arrive at work, all the expected and unexpected things that are thrown at you, whether it's tasks, people being rude, unkind. Usually they would be piled on in small little doses like that. But the fact is that with PMDD, it magnifies every single problem into a bigger one. So this is people pushing you around. Let's say usually it's like this, but this is people pushing you around in the bus or in the subway. This is a rude person. Never mind. This is a rude person. This is the work you have to do throughout the day. See, this is you feeling insecure because your body is so bloated and everything hurts and you're severely sleep deprived. There you go. It's all filled up. The problem with this is that no one is ever supposed to arrive to this point. This is the breaking point. This is suicidal ideation. This is you picking fights. This is you bursting out crying. This is you resorting to self-soothing that isn't necessarily healthy, any type of addiction, self-sabotage, self-harm. This is destruction of yourself, self-destruction, and everything around you. Actually, a great visual metaphor for this I don't know if any of you know the manga. It's also an anime form. It's called Mob Psycho 100. M-O-B Psycho, like Psycho 100. And it is such a great depiction of this. It's the story of this little boy who discovers that he has psychic powers, and they're pretty powerful actually. But he was kind of born like that, and he's not necessarily happy about it and he's so lovable. This character, I think he's in middle school. He's the most calm, chill middle schooler that you'll ever see. He doesn't talk much. He's always just like, his expression is often just like, it's by the same creators as One Punch Man. I heavily recommend it. But yeah, basically, he's chill all the time. But the thing is, it just so happens that people are always testing him and testing his patience and annoying him and provoking him. And so throughout every episode, you see that his counter goes from 0%, 10%, 20%, 30% every time someone annoys him or he has like a challenge or something. And when it gets to 100, all hell breaks loose. He completely loses consciousness and he just transforms into this crazy monster, and no one around him is safe. Even if it's his brother, even if it's his friends, it's just game over when he gets to 100. That is PMDD. If you let your bucket go to this point. And by the way, unlike in that anime manga Mob Psycho, when you're at 80%, you're feeling pain and distress at a level of 8 out of 10, which is a lot. Now, before I get to the practical solutions regarding this bucket, I'm going to introduce the other complementary analogy. So that is really going to help once I get to the practical tips. So like I said, during the luteal phase, which is PMDD week, your fight or flight system is on 24/7. The fight or flight system originally was meant to protect you for great imminent dangers. It was originally set in place when we were created at a time where there were tigers running after us, you know? It is something that is very taxing on the body, and that is supposed to be activated when there is truly a great life-threatening danger. That is why having it on 24/7 is crazy. And so during PMDD, your body is tricked by your hormones to think that there's a huge fire coming along. This is why this analogy is called the fire alarm analogy. Basically, during PMDD week, for the whole week, 24/7, imagine there's a fire alarm ringing inside your body. It's ringing through all of your cells. Your mind hears this fire alarm that's being sent throughout the body and is trying to do the right thing, but unfortunately, it's really not. Because basically, the mind doesn't know that this fire alarm is a false one. It doesn't understand that the fire alarm can be activated by the body itself, that the false alarm is coming from inside. Your mind is just going to desperately try to find fires everywhere, and it's never going to stop finding fires until it hears the fire alarm turn off. But the problem is that it doesn't understand the cause of the fire alarm. So it's going to try to find a fire with your relationships. It's going to try to find a fire with the people in the street. It's going to try to find a fire with work. It's going to try to find a fire with your past, your future. It's just going to send you the worst thoughts about everything and anything, which is why you feel so unsafe. You feel so alone. You feel paranoia. You feel hopelessness. You feel depression of the past, anxiety of the future. And that's why you're so pessimistic, because it's just your mind being like, everything is a damn fire. It has to be. Where is the fire alarm? Like, where is the fire? It's in there. And it's a false one. This is why this disorder causes extreme irritability and the feeling that everyone is out to get you. So now let's come back to our bucket analogy. And now that you truly understand what's going on, it's really time to give yourself some compassion and some patience. But what I have found is that if you create and then take little scoops like this to take out some water, or I don't know why I'm saying water, some stress throughout the day continuously, you will be able to keep your bucket, I would say, at an 80% maximum, even 70 sometimes on good days, on good PMDD days, for what can be considered good on those days. But thanks to these scoops, if you really use them repeatedly every day throughout the day, you can reach a 70 to 80% of tolerance and not get to your breaking point ever, which is how I've been living for the past couple of months. And it's been a game changer. The thing is, a disclaimer, which I have learned the hard way and I have had to learn after experimenting on myself a couple of months in a row. If you use scoops and you get to the point that you want, you're gonna feel great about it. But I made the mistake of thinking that it would stay at that level for the rest of the day. No, I'm just warning you because it's important to manage expectations in life. I feel that a lot of unhappiness comes from that in life. But if you manage to use your scoops effectively and get to a level of 70, 80 when you were in the red zone, you're gonna feel great, but don't expect it to last all day. It's gonna last sometimes an hour, sometimes 4 hours, sometimes 30 minutes, depending on how bad the situation is that day and depending on how big the scoop you used is and other factors. So when I'm talking about these little scoops, what I'm referring to are a multitude of little actions that you can take to regulate your nervous system throughout the day and to access your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system, and just calm down a little bit and regain a sense of control throughout the day. In the description box below, I'm gonna put all the things that I can think of that have helped me, and I'm gonna try to classify them because basically there's those that you can use when you have a little bit more time and energy at home, maybe in the morning or at night, but there's also a bunch of tiny scoops that have really helped me when you're actually already at work or outside and you only have 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes to yourself and you really need that quick little solution to just go back to a level where you're functional and all hell doesn't break loose. Oh, and also please do not limit yourself to the scoops and little techniques that I have written in the description box, because that is what worked for me. And I do want to take my time saying this because that is something also that I have learned through a lot of trial and error. What works for one person may many times not work at all for another person, or maybe it's not exactly that the technique doesn't work for you, but it's the duration of it and it's the way it's done. So I would always copy what others did and suggested online, especially to a T. But I saw the biggest change when I just adapted it to my needs. So even if someone says, do 15 minutes of this practice in this manner, in this setting, if it sounds good to me, I will. But otherwise, I'll maybe do 30 minutes of it or 5 minutes of it and in a completely different manner. The more you practice, the more you'll understand what really works for you. And there's also this beautiful thing that happens where you really get to know yourself. And once you really get to know yourself, you can set boundaries better. You can express what you like and what you don't like. Life just gets easier as a whole, which is much needed. So the second big tip is one of perspective shift. and it's one regarding the fire alarm analogy. So sometimes when you're going to catch yourself spiraling, which happens pretty much every day during PMDD week, but when you actively catch yourself doing it, like, oh, I'm doing it right now, you can tell your mind gently and with love and compassion and patience, even though I know it's hard during that week, but at least tell your mind at that moment, oh, I see what you're doing. You are trying to find a fire right now. I really appreciate it. This is not what's happening. Thank you. And you would be surprised how well that works, because a lot of the suffering that comes from PMDD, for me at least in the past, was that I didn't know that it was not a fire. I thought that everything was a fire. And so my mind would tell me, this is a fire. And then I would be like, a fire. I would just engage in whatever my mind was projecting. And no, that just makes things 100,000 times worse. So catch yourself spiraling and thank your mind and tell it, thank you, but no, this isn't it. The third tip is related to this, and it's the fact that, so your mind thinks the fire is outside, but the fire is actually comes from the inside. And so the fire alarm is activated by your body. It is not activated by anything outside, even though you have problems, I'm sure, but the issue relating to PMDD is that your body is activating the fight or flight system, aka the fire alarm. And so among the practices that I have listed below and that you will find for yourself, I would at first prioritize the ones that are related to the body. And so anything that can calm the body down will in turn calm the mind down, because it will lower the volume of the fire alarm. And so the mind will be able to rest a little bit and it won't try to find as many fires everywhere. This can be exercise, but it can just be any type of practice that you know of or that you can do research online that just calms the stress in your body down, your physical body. Finally, I want to give you the last analogy that I call the snowstorm analogy. And this has been very helpful, and it is also related to managing expectations. So imagine that we lived in a world where, for some reason, every month for 1 week, there's a huge snowstorm. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it will always be. Everyone would have accepted it, and two things would happen. One, everybody would prepare for it in advance every month. And two, everybody would have accepted that during that week, you can't do the things that you do in the other weeks. And so this is very important because, first of all, in terms of the preparation, for example, in terms of the scoops that I have listed in the description box, I would suggest starting to implement them in your life in a week that is not PMDD, because it's just going to be overwhelming and you've already got too much on your plate. You can try the easier ones during PMDD week, especially the short ones. But for the ones that require a bit more energy and habit building, I heavily recommend starting to try to incorporate them in your life on non-PMDD weeks. You can try even some during your period, some that are a little bit maybe less physically demanding. And then during the 2-3 weeks after that, you just continue to try to implement them so that by the time the snowstorm arrives, PMDD arrives, you've already incorporated these habits in your life and they just come easily to you. And regarding the second aspect of the snowstorm, you have to manage your expectations and just accept the fact that your brain is just not going to be as functional. And so you're not going to be at the level of productivity, sociability, availability that you, creativity that you would like to be, and the level that you have set for yourself when you are not affected by this disorder. Oh, and one extra tip, and this is valid for any human, but it happens a lot in PMDD. Avoid rumination and ruminating at all costs. It is the worst mental habits. Just replaying a CD of negative thoughts. So much like I said before, when you catch yourself doing that as well, just stop and try to do something that will make you stop. So it can be movement, music, any type of activity, but just one that won't let you ruminate. And worst case scenario, what really helps if you really can't stop is just write it all down. I promise you, there's not one time where I was ruminating and I decided to write it all down. It takes time, okay? But once you're done, after 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 pages, you will have nothing more to say. And once you're done with that, it'll be out of your brain. Amazing. Okay, this part is not for everyone, especially if you're starting this PMDD healing journey. So you might want to skip it, or if you don't skip it, please don't get mad at me. This is just what I have come to realize in the past 4 or 5 months. But if you can't relate to it at all, this is not the part of the video that's the most important, but I did want to share in case maybe some people do relate. Despite the torture of PMDD, and if I could get rid of it completely, I would. I hate to admit it, but I have found somewhat of a gift in it. Basically, during PMDD, all the negative things in my life and in my psyche are magnified. And so all of these shadow parts of me and all of these little, shadow parts of me in my subconscious especially, or even in my external life, in my relationships and work life, etc., they all come to the forefront and I can't ignore them. Whereas usually in non-PMDD weeks, I think my subconscious does a very good job of just ignoring them so that it never comes forward into my consciousness. But I have found that every time that I have PMDD, I have these issues that come that I usually don't think about, but that are very real, and these very big realizations about negative parts of me that I don't like or my life. And so now that I have all the tools that I have talked about, I'm also able to engage in introspection and shadow work during my PMDD week. I take time to really listen to all of these shadows coming to the forefront. I meditate, I journal about them, I make art about them. I just lie down thinking about them. And it really helps me, for lack of a better term, exorcise with an O, or purge them. And I do always come out feeling lighter and a little bit more enlightened once I get out of PMDD week, ever since I started implementing this. Also, it has really helped me reconnect with my feminine energy, because feminine energy, which is not exclusive to women, by the way, is partly about being able to hold space for huge amounts of pain and just be there and be a witness to it, hold space to it, and then transmute it into healing and love and peace. And so I've been doing that a lot, and it always ends up in extra forgiveness and unconditional love. And it's been a pretty great process, despite, again, the horror that is PMDD, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Okay, this last part is a little woo-woo, but reading different testimonies of PMDD, looking at myself and looking at people who have it around me, I can't help but notice that PMDD very often affects women who haven't been able to access their feminine energy in life as much as they wanted to subconsciously or needed to, because they have had to overly resort to their masculine energy because their life was quite unstable and they just didn't feel safe to be their soft, feminine self for whatever reason. Those reasons, there's many reasons. I'm sure if you're in this case, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I believe that the part of PMDD is created by this imbalance that has been created after years and years of not being able to access that feminine energy within us because we always had to be strong and vigilant. I truly hope that these analogies, perspective shifts, and these tips will help you and will make things manageable. Again, I'm not promising the world you won't ever, not ever, but if you implement all of this, you won't feel completely healed and free from pain, and you won't feel amazing or just the way you do when you don't have PMDD. But what I truly hope is that the more you implement all of this, the bigger the decrease in the severe symptoms that you have been experiencing thus far. And by the way, other than all the tips I've talked about and that all the little scoops and stuff, on some days, if you just want to say, F it, all I need is to rest and to watch my comfort show and not talk to anyone and eat my comfort food under my comfort blanket, listen to my comfort music and just not interact with anything, and I have no energy to implement any of the scoops or whatever. That happens to me also quite often. And that is actually, it should count as a scoop in itself. It's amazing if you can give yourself those moments, which you should also give yourself those moments outside of PMDD week, but be extra compassionate with yourself and forgiving if you give yourself a little bit more of these moments during PMDD week because you are in a literal snowstorm. Okay, that is all for today. I will see you very soon. Take it easy. Be patient with yourself. Things, especially good things, take a lot of time. Do it one thing at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time. Bad days are okay. You can always start over the next day. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.